All right, we are live. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Ole Miss a 22-19 victory today over the Kentucky Wildcats. You're looking, whenever the polls come out next week, you're looking at a top 10 team. Ole Miss will be in the top 10 next week. Ole Miss 5-0. We said that all the questions that are to be had about this team, you won't know any answers until after Kentucky. Well, Jackson Dart is getting a little bit more comfortable. The only problem that we have to deal with, and I'll talk to Bill Flowers about it, is the center snaps today were pretty catastrophic. They were oh so bad, and I think that might be why they're not looking at the middle of the field, because Jackson Dart has to drop his eyes down, and the linebackers moving around, and that kind of bit him a little bit earlier. How you doing, Bill?
Doing good, man. I absolutely agree with you. And hotty toddy, man.
Yeah.
What a my wife and my daughter weren't feeling well, so I didn't make it over. I didn't want to be in the doghouse.
Yeah, I hear you.
Leave my wife having to take care of 6 kids and herself not feeling well as well. So unfortunately, I didn't get to go over for it. But what a game! I mean, that was a that was a nail biter.
Yeah, that was something really cool, and I like how the defense really stepped up in these fourth quarter with that last sack. Jared Ivey, Miss Tracy is a avid watcher of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. His mom, so congratulations, Miss Ivy, and Jared actually made a game-winning play. You can always say that, because that play under a minute to go inside the 10-yard line, he makes that play. There's no doubt of what the play of the game is, but man, that was pretty huge, I think.
Well, I think the game ball goes to our defense again.
Mm.
That's what we kind of talked about last week. Was you're going to have to. You can't just sit back and play a hybrid. I'm going to stop the run, but also stop the pass. You've got to absolutely bring pressure every single play, and make them feel uncomfortable on every play, and that's exactly what they did. And I think that was the biggest. Excuse me. Sorry.
Oh, anyway, Bill, yes, no worries, man. Yeah, the three teams that we got.
Announcer, I mean,
Yeah,
that's what shocked people. People were just like, "Man, I can't believe how good Ole Miss's defense has gotten, how aggressive and how consistent they've been." And I think that's a shock to everybody.
yeah, they played really, really well. Now, Kentucky came into this game, and before the game, I tweeted out to anybody that follows me on Twitter, they can attest to this, that I thought Kentucky might try to play murder ball against Ole Miss, because Alabama did that last year with great success. Baylor did that in the Sugar Bowl with success. And of course, Auburn did it as well last year. So the last three losses in the last two years have been against teams that tried to play like this. And sure enough, Kentucky tried to do that. But the defense was up to the task. Chris Rodriguez, good running back, but they came up and just walled him. He's going to have to sit in the cold tub when he gets back to Kentucky.
Yeah, well, and that's what you're going to have to do.
Hmm.
That's what we talked about last week. I said they're going to have to put all their eggs in the basket of, we're going to blitz you, and if you do run the ball, you're going to get a wall of just kamikaze headhunters coming through and just walloping you, but putting pressure on that quarterback. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, Chris Rodriguez is a great player, you could tell, but he earned every single yard that he got. There was nothing that he got that was easy.
Yeah, once again, just like last week, I think Ole Miss scored 3 points in the second half. So,
Yeah,
so far, this has not been a second half team. So there's plenty of room for improvement for this team moving forward, but they proved today that they can win a top 10 game. There's really only potential one game on the schedule that you might look at as like, oh, Ole Miss is going to struggle to win that game. But you can't even say they're not going to win that game now, because if Jackson Dart continues to progress, as he has over the first 5 games, over the next 5 games, he has a chance to be a really good quarterback by the end of the year.
well, I think you hit the nail on the head in regards to the middle of the field, and I mean, anybody that's listened to the show has heard me gripe about, making sure that they hit the middle of the field, and you saw that today when they were able to get good snaps, and Jackson Dart didn't have to reach down and keep it and take his eyes off the backers in order to get the ball. We were able to sustain the drives and get things going, and I think that if we can get that squared away, that is going to be a game changer for our second half, because the second half, I mean, it's almost like we're becoming one dimensional. They're saying to us, you're not going to beat us on the run. You're not going to beat us on the ground. Between Judkins and Zach, we're not going to let you run the ball on us. You're going to have to beat us in the air. You're going to have to do that. And so I think obviously having the center issue was potentially a catastrophic issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that can cost Ole Miss a football game, especially with A&M and some teams coming up that can beat A&M and LSU can beat Ole Miss, and that snap issue could come up to really bite them.
Well, and I think that it's going to be vital that Ole Miss now having a defense that can win games for you, and not only win games for you, but also, sustain, make sure that if you are in a game situation where you need to hold the ball, you can, they can do what they need. In the past, Ole Miss has been like, if we can't score, 45 points, we're going to lose. That's not the case now. Now it's offense, do what you need to do. And I think that's something that Ole Miss has really never had. And I think Kiffin has done a fantastic job of assembling, a coaching staff, this year. I mean, Partridge, he did a fantastic job as first-year coordinator. My gosh, they called up some great plays. So I definitely feel like they're in the right spot in order to have a long runway for success this year.
Yeah. There's a chance. And Ole Miss coming up next, they have the road game at Vanderbilt, which is probably the 12th team in the SEC. And then they have a home game against Auburn, who right now is the 14th team in the SEC. So there's a chance this top 10 stay can be up there for a while whenever Ole Miss goes down to Baton Rouge. Replay of 2014 for the Ole Miss Rebels. It should be interesting.
Yeah, going to Vanderbilt, Ole Miss does not have a record where it's just like, okay, we're just gonna put our head in the sand and bypass them. They can easily snake bite Ole Miss from our history. But going down to Auburn, playing at Auburn, I don't care what the record for Auburn looks like. You're playing in Jordan-Hare Stadium. That's a hostile environment. It's going to be interesting to see what they look like today.
Yeah, that's a home game.
Today's game is?
No, the Auburn game, they're going to come to Oxford. But LSU's going over there. Yeah,
that's right. Yes, so they're coming here. But but Auburn, I don't care how bad Auburn looks. You're still going to play Auburn, who's a good team. It's going to be interesting to see what happens today with LSU playing Auburn. Mm-hmm. It just seems like Auburn always comes out with some kind of player that they've never had before that just shines against Ole Miss. So what we have going down the stretch is nothing but brutal, because you go Arkansas, Alabama, LSU. It's going to be extremely tough. And again, I don't give Auburn any slack in saying that they're going to be a rollover. I think it's brutal, and I think that only magnifies that. If we're going to win down the road, you're going to have to continue to put points on the board in the second half. You can't do that. You cannot only play one half and then expect your defense to sustain you. Can't do that.
All right, Blake Bennett in the chat says a lot of the second half struggles were due to time of possession. Tough season ahead, but we control our own destiny. That's true. We did talk last week all the time about this was a possibility. This was something I predicted. This game, Ole Miss would win 24-20, ended up 22-19. It's already 14-0 Alabama, by the way, up in Fayetteville. So it should be pretty interesting to see. But one thing I want to talk about is the impressiveness of Quinchon Judkins. Another 100-yard gain, another touchdown, 7 yards a carry. It's almost getting to the time we should start thinking about this kid as the starting running back, essentially.
Well, this is part of what I think what we're talking about is in the first half, this kid comes in and essentially did it in the second quarter. Because it seems like Zach's playing the first quarter and he comes in the second quarter. But you can tell these teams are like, listen, you're not gonna let this kid beat us. If you're gonna beat us, you're gonna beat us through the air. You're not gonna beat us on the ground. They know how good this kid is. I mean, like you said, this is his fifth 100-yard game, and everybody knows when he's in a game what he can do. The time of possession issue is the fact that we can't get the ball moving, throwing the ball in the middle of the field, and getting those things that we need to do. In the first half, we were able to do it. Second half, we weren't, and a lot of that comes to the center exchange. That's the issue. But I definitely think that from a standpoint of who's starter or whatever, I would like to see a combination of them a little bit, not first quarter to him coming in the second quarter. If you're going to do that, I mean, he's definitely earned the spot to say if there's a starter, there's starter 1A and 1B. He's definitely not second string. That's for sure.
Yeah, real quick, I want to tell you about Underdog Fantasy. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. It's the easiest place to spice up your college football season. And by easy, I mean easy. So while you're watching your favorite team play, you can make a little cash. So I like Jordan Travis higher than 260 against Wake Forest. Drake May higher than 265 against Virginia Tech. This is what you do. You pick whether or not the player will go higher or lower than the statistics out there. So it's kind of like that. And it's available in over 30 states. If it might not be available in yours, I apologize, but soon it might get there. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any team, not just your team, and decide if they will finish with higher or lower stats. It's one of the easiest fantasy football games to play out there, and you can win cold, hard cash in a single game. So sign up with promo code LOCKEDON. That's one word. And Underdog will double your first deposit of up to $100. That's right. Deposit $100, get $100 free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy. Promo code Locked On. That's one word. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. All right. Thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notification. Of course, comment and upvote the video itself, if you don't mind. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to basically this next game. One of the stars of the game, the main star of the game is probably Jared Ivey. He made the sack inside of a minute left to go in the game, caused the fumble, basically a game-saving play. He is my number one star of the game for this game. How about you, Bill?
It's hard not to agree with that. I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I would say Judkins for offensively, Ivy defensively. I would agree, and again, I give all the kudos to the defense today.
Yeah, this was their game. Also, Malik Heath had
Yes.
six
I
or
was
eight
going to say
catches
that.
for 100 yards.
Yeah.
The first 100-yard receiver for this game. That was impressive and needed. 6 catches, 100 yards with a long of 26, and that was important.
And I they attacked the middle of the field in the first half. They tried, and you saw what happened. And maybe this is a little bit of the hesitancy of throwing over the middle for them is that maybe Dart's not seeing the linebackers as well as they'd like him to see, because again, when you're throwing over the middle, they're easier to do, and you can see what happens when you can hit the middle of the field. It will sustain your drives, but you have to be careful and making sure you don't throw interceptions. So I give a huge shout out to Charlie Weiss Jr. For his play calling today. I thought they came out, and I thought they were aggressive. I thought that they attacked what the defense was giving them, and so I was really pleased to see. To me, what was going to win and lose the game for us was our ability to attack and take what the defense gives us, and I thought they did a good job of that in trying to get the middle of the field open.
Yeah, it was something else. We are working right quick to bring in Derek Vandegrift. He's coming on the show as well. All right. Change it over. Hey, Derek, you're on the air. How you doing, bud?
Man, doing good. How about y'all?
Pretty good. What are your takeaways from today's game?
Man, just a really, really tough effort by this team, right? I mean, they were kind of up against it in the second half. Kind of offense really struggled in the second half a little bit, but the defense made plays when it needed to, and that's kind of been the story of the year, right? We kind of thought this defense would be able to make those kind of plays for us, and they were able to do it for us, thankfully.
Yeah, it was something, and Miss Ivy, Tracy Ivy, is a watcher of the show. Jared coming up with that big strip sack with under a minute to go, basically a game winner, and I would say congratulations for that. That was really cool. What were your impressions on Will Levis in this game?
It really didn't change from what I thought before this game. Really, you look in the first half, we pressured him, kind of made him speed up a little bit, and it really worked in our favor. And in the second half, we kind of had a little bit of trouble getting that kind of pressure on him, which they ran the ball really well in the second half, right? Like that's one thing that you got to realize there. We didn't stop the run as well as we would like to in the second half there. But yeah, if you put pressure on him, you can see he kind of speeds up a little bit and doesn't make the decisions that you would expect of somebody that has that kind of talent. But he's a really good player. He made a lot of plays and definitely made us sweat it out there at the end of the game.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, where would you rate Jackson Dart after 5 games?
When you say rate, in what way? Like
how is he improving? Just from he started against Troy.
I think he's rapidly progressing, and this is one thing that I didn't really appreciate and I didn't really take into account is that he never last year when he was at USC, he was obviously a true freshman then. He only played a few games there, but he was not in an RPO system. No. So not only, this is a whole new system for him to learn. It's not like something that I guess, maybe he was in high school. I don't know. But so for him to show progression and how he's, we all know he's got a live arm, but I think his accuracy, I think his comfort level is definitely improved. Obviously, his ability to run. I mean, to me, he's one of those kind of guys that if they can continue to call play calls that allow him to throw in the middle of the field, and he doesn't have the snaps that are errant to where he's having to keep his eyes off on the ground looking for the ball. I really feel like he can be a top tier SEC quarterback this year. But a lot of I wouldn't have said that in the beginning, the first two games. Third game, fourth game, but absolutely. To me, he is progressing as fast as you could hope.
Yeah.
And he's going to make mistakes here and there. He's going to make mistakes. So you can't, Kiffin's going to be tough on him, but I think he's tough on him because he knows what kind of potential he's got, how good he can be.
Yeah, just heads up. We had 20 first downs in the game. We had 9 passes for first down, 11 rushes, none by penalty. We're 50% on third down, 7 for 14. They had 399 total yards. We ran for 186. This was a good Kentucky defense. It wasn't necessarily the best that Ole Miss is going to see, but this was a sound Kentucky defense in this game, and we were still able to kind of gash them and make explosive plays. They threw for about the same amount of money. This was 2 really evenly matched teams. The only thing that stands out in this game, I'm trying to find the stat. I can't necessarily see it right now, but in time of possession, I think Kentucky was close to 36, 37 minutes in this game. Isn't that right, Derek?
Yeah. I mean, they really controlled the ball. That's kind of what we talked about last Tuesday on our Twitter space, right? I mean, They haven't ran the ball particularly well all year. Obviously, getting Rodriguez back kind of helped their running ability out this week and all, but they've still found a way to control the ball even in the pass game because Will Levis has been so efficient this year. And they did it again this game, But kind of piggybacking off of Bill Flowers real quick, talking about Jackson Dart. You saw us really open it up and give him more chance today, which is something we haven't seen all year.
Right.
And there were two or three plays where he couldn't quite get the ball over the linebackers, right? That there was that one Domingo that would have been an obvious touchdown if he could got it up there, but that's going to come with time and all, Right. But Kiffin is obviously showing his faith in him and letting him throw the ball and trying to get the ball downfield, and that's what we need to reach our ceiling this year because Jackson can obviously make those throws. You saw it when it left his hand. You thought, oh, my God, that's a touchdown right there. But it didn't quite have that air under it. But that stuff he's going to learn from it. The more games and the more plays that he gets in the game, being able to go downfield like that. And that was really encouraging to me, even though he didn't make them this week. He saw the problems in it. And I would bet later on in the year when you get to the LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, stuff like that, he's going to see that again, and he's going to be able to put that air under the ball to get it over that linebacker to be able to hit that big play. And we really did open it up with him today. I thought that was a really good sign for us because he's the kind of guy that can really make plays for us if we allow him to. And later on in the year, he'll be able to do that for us.
Well, and I also thought it opened up, not only for him, but for some of the receivers. We've all kind of been sitting around going, okay, well, who's going to step up and who's going to be the receiver? And today you saw that with them opening it up, they can self. And I think that's something that you want to see. You as a receiving core and as a team especially for the second half, you want to be able to see the team, us be able to throw downfield, be more confident and opening up the offense when we need to. But I'll tell you one thing that I was a little not shocked, but I felt like there were in some instances we could, Dart has really impressed me as a runner and how efficient he has been as a runner because he's such a big guy. I feel like some of our opportunities when it's third and short, when in the second half, everybody's stacking the box saying we're not going to let you beat us on the ground. I would like to see a little bit more of Dart being able to take those play action, not giving it to the running back, letting him do a little bit more of that. I know everybody holds their breath now because they now realize that is the quarterback of our team. But I feel like there's probably a couple drives where we ended up punting the ball, where if he would have had control over it, we would have. And I think that's a huge aspect of these Kiffin offenses, is having your quarterback involved in the run. And I think he was a little bit more He was a little bit more involved in the run the first half. Maybe I'm wrong. I didn't see him really run the ball at all in the second half. Did you guys?
No, maybe once or twice, and especially on the last drive, Jackson Dart ran the ball. It was like a quarterback counter, but they did consciously not running. But a lot of that was Kentucky just held the ball the whole second half.
Yeah, they did. But kind of, again, piggybacking off Bill right there, talking about his ability as a runner, there was that play. It was either the second or third quarter. It was a designed quarterback run. And you see him start to the right, and the linebacker come free off the right side, and you see him adjust, run that linebacker into the offensive line, go around the left side there, and be able to pick up 8 or 9 yards for a first down for us. I mean, that's the kind of thing that he can give you, given that kind of opportunity, right? I mean, he has really good vision. He can see what's out there in front of him, and he can adjust and run those guys into blockers to be able to get the extra yards to keep the chain moving. And that's what's really impressive to me.
Yeah. One thing that we talked before you got on here, Derek, and I want your opinion on that. This is a team that have struggled with center snaps. The center snaps were just really, really rough today, to the point where this team cannot run a jet sweep, which is important to this offense to be able to time that up. And you could see where the jet motion was there, and he was just overrunning it. And that is probably the one thing that is the thing that can come back to bite them as the SEC progresses.
Yeah, I mean, that's frustrate the hell out of Kiffin, right? I mean, because there were you could see 2 or 3 times during the game where they had that play called, where if it was timed perfectly, the snap was right, that you had an advantage out there. You don't know how it would work out until the guy actually gets out there and you see how the blocking lines up and all that. But we never even gave it a chance, and that was probably really frustrating for Kiffin. But yeah, the snaps were a real big deal today. I mean, literally the first snap of the game was low and to the left, and kind of threw the whole play off, right? But saw it throughout the entire game, so that's something we got to get cleaned up. I know Acker isn't a natural center, and I'm sure he's out there just doing the best he can, but. That's definitely something they need to work on if we're going to be working with him for the next week or two, But that's when it comes to offense, the whole timing portion, when you have all the motion and everything Kiffin has, like that's the kind of thing that you have to get down. You got to get the snaps in, you got to get them on time, and they got to be on point, because if not, all the motion and everything just kind of goes out the window. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Anyway, when we come back after we take this short break, we'll hit our last segment and we'll start to talk about Vanderbilt and looking ahead a little bit, because we've talked all offseason. We wouldn't have answers to questions about this team until after this game. Well, this game has happened. We'll talk about that right after this. All right, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including iTunes and Spotify. Do us a favor and give us a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify. It doesn't matter what you say, just make sure it's a 5-star review. That way, when people search on the Google machine, all of a sudden the Locked On Ole Miss podcast will come up, which right now we're like the top left on there. So whenever you search it, it will be there. So thank you very much for that. All right. So Ole Miss, a 22-19 win over Kentucky. Kentucky actually had a good run of things in the second half, but the defense just came up and made play after play after play. Now, this is moving on. Next week is at Vanderbilt. The week after that, Auburn comes here. The week after that, I think is LSU in Baton Rouge. This is 3 games that Ole Miss, theoretically, it should be a lower level than what they just survived. But, yeah. Bill, what do you see as this October progresses with this Ole Miss team?
What do I see? I mean, obviously, next week against Vanderbilt, I would like to see us implement the same offense that we did today. I would like to see, some of those passes like we was referred to about not being able to hit over the top because they just haven't done them in games. There's one thing to do it in practice. There's another thing to do in games, and I think that as they can do that, and Vanderbilt, they're not just an easy W. I don't care what our record against Vanderbilt is not undefeated by any stretch of the imagination. So, and it kind of scares me about us taking them lightly. And sometimes they end up having a record of injuring players. So I think that our October, you're about to get into the teeth of the beast. But just being steady, just staying the course, getting a little bit better each and every day, every game, continuing to progress and darts maturity, are the maturity of the play calling of making sure that you're being aggressive, and getting to the point where when we get to play A&M, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, that you can confidently call these plays that you're going to need to attack the middle of the field, these things that you're, in getting those center exchange squared away. Offensively, that's what I see, just a progression of maturity and in the team, and defensively continuing to see them be consistent. I think that's the big thing that's kind of an eye raiser for everybody. Is just how consistent Ole Miss defense has been in being aggressive, and they made some mistakes today. They made some errors in tackling, but that's okay because you're only going to get better. You're only going to get better on knowing what you have to improve on. So I see the month of October as an opportunity for them to get better. That's what I see.
Yeah, if you look at Barry and Brown for Kentucky, good grief, an unbelievably dangerous player that was just a whisker from 3 touchdowns today. That number 2 from Kentucky, that was a legit player. And if Kentucky would have come back and won this game, it would have been on his shoulders. He would have been the hero, right, Derek?
Yeah, that's but that's kind of why you played the game out, right? I mean, there's you have those kind of guys every single game in the SEC. Like that's kind of what Oklahoma and Texas have coming their way when they join this conference. There's no weeks off in this conference. I mean, every single week when you get done with non-conference play, there's teams week in and week out that can beat you. And kind of like Bill said, when you go to Vanderbilt next week, we have our record with Vanderbilt, and yeah, we should have our way with them and all. But at the same time, you never know how the game's going to go. And it was no different this week. And Kentucky was a really, really good team. And, we were fortunate to come out with a win today, and they didn't give it to us. We took it. I think that's the important thing with the day. We ended up forcing that turnover. The defense stood up and got the ball back when we needed to have it. And, with the schedule coming up, like you were talking about just a little while ago, you go to Vanderbilt and then you get Auburn at home. Those should be 2 wins, but this is the SEC. You got to prepare week in, week out, because as soon as you let your guard down, somebody's going to step up and pop you if you're not ready for it. And then when you get done with those 2, you go to Baton Rouge, to Texas A&M, and then you get a week off, and then you welcome Bama into your place, right? This was the first big hurdle. People may look at it and see that we have 2 weeks to kind of get things right before we go to Baton Rouge and go to A&M, but that's not how it works in this conference. And I know Bill knows it. I know you know it, Steve. You followed this conference for a long time, just like both of us have. If you're not ready, you're going to get popped. And so they've got to keep going, got to keep improving. And I was really, really impressed with Jackson Dart today. I know he threw that really bad pick. We were actually talking about it. sitting out there on my back porch right before halftime, like, he just keeps throwing it into coverage. Well, that's kind of what you got to deal with. It's kind of like Matt Corral a little bit, right? Like, you had to deal with him throwing it into coverage. He's going to pick his spots, but you've got to let him make those kind of mistakes right now, right? Because he's going to get better. You see talent coming up in him, and so you take the good with the bad. You hope the good doesn't you hope the bad doesn't outweigh the good, and that's kind of where I'm at today. I mean, he looked good. Got to get our center back there. That's kind of the biggest part. But we do have a couple weeks where we should be favorites here the next couple weeks before we go into a really, really big 4-game stretch of LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Arkansas. Those are going to be 4 really, really big games. But we can't overlook these next.
Yeah, and Bill, you talk about the Vanderbilt history and everything. It took a Jonathan Nichols 52-yard field goal in 2003.
Yeah.
To get past them.
Yeah, I mean, there's you can't ever look at Vanderbilt as just a powder puff. Yeah, you just can't. You can't do it. Our history with Vanderbilt is always Vanderbilt sees us as that big brother that I think I can get them. I think I can take them. And so they just give it everything they've got to you. Maybe their mentality is when they play Alabama or they play somebody else, it's like, we're gonna tuck our tail and go and just take the licking. Against us, they think they got a chance, and so I think that's where we have to go in there and be aggressive and just take the air out of them real quick. But I want to see us be aggressive. I want us to be able for Jackson Dart to feel comfortable about throwing over the middle of the field, throwing these passes where you're a little timid to put him in that position, but you better put him in that position now rather than later. I think played better than our score showed today. I mean, we gave them almost a touchdown on the kickoff return. We gave them some big plays on the screens. So I feel like we're playing the kind of ball that we need to play. But in regards to Vanderbilt, use it as a game to really be aggressive and executing your offensive play you're going to need for down the road. You need him to have confidence that he can do what he needs to do in a game. The first game that they really let him open up and feel like a quarterback. So hopefully next week, they're going to continue to do that and be aggressive with it. That's my big hope for that Vanderbilt game.
Yeah, Derek, that little sideline pass to Malik Heath in the face of the rush, Dart has now hit that 4 or 5 times, and there was one time I think Malik Heath dropped it on the sideline. He can throw that really well, and that is one thing we learned about Jackson Dart. That pass he is very good at.
Yeah. He really hit it a few times today, and kind of going back to your point last Tuesday, Stephen. We really did try to work the middle of the field today too, which really worked out in our favor. It seemed like we hit 3, 4, 5 completions, something like that over the middle of the field. It seemed like today. It seemed like it was a point of emphasis for it, which I think was more of us trying to open up the offense a little bit more. But yeah, that sideline pass to Malik Heath, he was incredible today. Had 100 and something yards. And that didn't even count the one that they called incomplete, that kind of questionable. I mean, I do understand why they called it incomplete, but he definitely should have caught that if he would have controlled it through the ground there on the sideline. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you want to do with a 19-year-old quarterback, though, right? You want to find stuff they're comfortable with, stuff they're good with, and keep calling that play over and over again. That sideline pass seems to be something they're good at, and they started incorporating Trigg in a little bit more today, right? Like you kind of saw that 3 or 4 times throughout the day. And so, yeah, I mean, you can see they're trying to expand a little bit since they finally quote unquote settled on a quarterback. So I think you'll see more of that next week, the week after, leading into these big games that we've been talking about. Not to overlook either one of the next two, but you still have to kind of get those get those kind of plays in. That way he's a little more comfortable when the bigger games come up.
Yeah. David Landrum in the chat had a question. Said, Steven, I've got a question for you. The defense looks night and day better than last year. Is that because there are no core coordinators? There actually are co-coordinators. Maurice Crum is the co-defensive coordinator. I think it is just year 2 in the defense, and there's a natural progression. And some of the talent that has been infused is really, really important for this team. Now, Bill, before we get out of here, what are some final thoughts?
I'm the first one to sing the praises of our offensive coordinator for finally opening up the middle of the field. That was first and foremost my utmost important thing. So I was so happy to see that, and I think it's only going to increase. Offensive line, I thought did a great job, except for the center exchange. Defensively, I felt like our tackling was give it a 90%, but we definitely had some bad misses. Secondary, I thought they played great. So, man, they are a lot further along than I would have thought they were. And I think our coaching staff is putting their players in the right spot. That was the biggest takeaway for me today, is that our play calling was spot on. They got the talent, but if they don't put them in the right spots, they don't win. And today, the coaching staff definitely put them in the right spot. So kudos to the coaching staff.
All right, Derek.
Yeah. Well said by Bill there. Obviously, I was really impressed with the defense as a whole, because when I saw Corey Coleman wasn't going to play, I thought that was going to be a really big deal in this game because of how good of a pass rusher he was. Right, with that Kentucky offensive line, as much as they have struggled getting pressure on Will Levis, as good of a player as he is, and Cedric Johnson, J.J. Pegues, all of those guys on the defensive side of the ball still were able to get pressure on him. And I think that's a testament to how deep we are. And that's kind of more than I expected coming into this game. I thought Corey Coleman would have been a big deal if we'd been able to get him back. And turns out that it didn't matter because we were still able to get that pressure on him. So that was a big deal to me. Get him another week off, get him healthy, and get him ready for this stretch run for this big stretch SEC games we got coming up, because we're really going to need him. He's a really, really talented pass rusher. And, we were able to get the job done today without him. And our secondary, DeAndre Prince, played a heck of a game. That one-on-one that he had there the beginning of the fourth quarter downfield, when they left him on an island, he just went up and ended up ripping the ball out of the guy's hands. That's really good to see. The defense just really, really stepped up and really showed me something today without their best pass rusher. And that's really encouraging coming up with this long slate of SEC games we got coming up.
Yeah, my takeaway is they need to get the center exchange cleaned up.
Yeah.
That is their fatal flaw at the moment, and that needs to be taken care of by the time you get to A&M, by the time you get to LSU. Use the next 2 weeks to get that situated. But this Kentucky team was a really good team. You watched them play. That was 2 really good football teams on the field. Sometimes when Ole Miss plays these games, you can see the difference talent-wise in the 2 teams. This was 2 fairly evenly matched teams. And Ole Miss was able to pull it out. And honestly, if we're going to be absolutely real, with better center snaps, Ole Miss wins that game by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to get out of here. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Obviously, this will be available on demand for anybody that wants to listen to it. Thank you very much to Bill Flowers and Derek Vandigriff for coming on. This week it's been weird, but thank you very much. And Ole Miss, a 22-19 winner over number 7 Kentucky right here. This is a top 10 team. We'll see you later.
That's right.